Hello, welcome to Converging Dialogues. This is Xavier Bonilla. On this episode, I'm very happy to be talking with the wonderful Tara Palmeri. Tara is senior political correspondent at Puck and host of the Ringer's election podcast, Somebody's Gotta Win. She's previously worked as a journalist at many outlets, including Politico and ABC News, and she has been covering the 2024 U.S. presidential election really since it kind of started back in the late summer of last year. And I read her stuff and I listened to the podcast, and I was lucky enough to get her to come on and talk all things 2024 U.S. election. So we start by talking about why are we getting the sequel that nobody wants? So we have a rematch of the 2020 U.S. presidential election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, why that is, why we're here again. We talk about Biden's challengers or lack thereof. There was a few, but nothing that really took hold. We, of course, talk about Biden's age. We talk about the Democrats' so-called bench, who's waiting in the wings, who could be viable. Obviously, it's not going to be for this year, but, probably for 2028. We also talk about why, for voters, feelings or gut or instinct about a candidate is more important now than policy or how many bills got passed. Why that's really, it's not a new phenomenon, but why it seems to be more salient now. We talk about immigration, how that's a big issue now for this election cycle. It was in 2016 when Donald Trump ran and got elected. And almost 10 years later, we're still talking about it. We haven't really done much on it. And in some ways, it's just become more of an issue. We also talk about predictions, what we think could happen, and many other topics. Tara is quite lovely. I really enjoy her work, her writing. Her podcast is fantastic. Everybody should go and subscribe and follow. She's just really, really good. She's got a really, really good balanced and measured approach. She can push back where needed. She asks great questions. She's, as I can attest to, she's been great on both sides of the mic now. It's wonderful to listen to her podcast, and she's a great guest as well. So make sure you read her work and listen to her podcast. As always, you can find these conversations over at Converging Dialogues at Substack.com. I'm also on YouTube, so get over there, subscribe, follow, like, share with your friends, all the good things. And now I bring you Tara Palmeri. I'm here with Tara Palmeri. Tara, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, this is great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedule. You've done a lot of things. You're on all the shows. You're on MSNBC, CNN. You were on Bill Maher this past week. You're just a busy lady.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really wonderful.
Great. Big week.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm excited to talk with you all things election, politics, etc. Before we do, just give listeners your kind of snapshot of who you are professionally and what you're currently up to.
Right. I'm a political reporter. I cover the 2024 election for Puck News, and I also have my own podcast, Somebody's Gotta Win, and I cover the 2024 election. Obviously, it has a certain take. Perhaps it reflects the lack of enthusiasm that a lot of Americans are feeling about this election, but my show is there to help you get through it all and to feel like you know more every single day.
I was telling somebody the other day, since I have my own podcast, I don't listen to other podcasts too much anymore, mostly because I'm busy with my own. But there are a few, and yours is one of them. It scratches that political wonky side of me, that itch. And so it's a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend it. I think I've listened to most of the episodes. It's quite good. It's very, very good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And you started kind of like when I think the Republican debates were kicking off back in August, right?
I did. We started early. I'm still new to I've done two podcasts, narrative podcasts that were really popular on Jeffrey Epstein. One is Broken, Jeffrey Epstein, and Power, the Maxwells on Ghislaine Maxwell, but they're narrative podcasts, more like a true crime series. This is a chat show, like what you're doing right now. And it's a totally different set of skills. And, we started a little earlier on for me to get used to the format, for listeners to follow me along the early journey, the primary. But now we're in the election, full gear, general election. We know who our candidates are. Nothing is going to change
Mm-hmm.
except for unless Murphy's Law decides it.
Yeah, well, your production rate is pretty good too. You do 2 a week, much like myself as well. So it's that's a pretty good consistent flow there.
Yep, The Ringer has an amazing crew.
Mm-hmm.
They are like some of the best professionals in podcasting, and they produce for me. So yeah, they make sure I'm on it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So yeah, I want to talk about the election, obviously. I think today there's a few states. So we're recording this March 12th. So there's a few states. It should be wrapped up officially. As the last count, Trump has 1,076 delegates, needs 1,215. Biden has 1,855 delegates and needs 1,968. So they should basically wrap it up today. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, it's over.
May 12th, I think they said. No, May 9th. Yeah, May 12th, even earlier than Trump people thought. But yes, it's been over for a while now. But
yeah.
for the purpose of of a primary, I guess we should say that there were some competitors. But I think for me, I knew it was over after New Hampshire because there was no path for Nikki Haley.
Mm-hmm. I remember before Trump kind of announced officially, everyone was very much on the DeSantis kind of wagon. Everyone online was very, very happy about how he was taking it to the libs and he was doing all these things in Florida. He was the golden boy. Everyone was so like, he's like Trump without all the rhetorical like bullshit. And everyone was very excited. And I never bought it. I just think in a general, I think around states outside of like, Florida and down in the South, like I just don't think it was going to really last. He was just kind of anti-woke and that's it. And he fizzled out very fast. Right. Was that a surprise for you?
Strong message. DeSantis? No, I thought he was a weak candidate from the jump. I think I called him a test tube candidate that donors were hoping would be a viable alternative to Trump, or at least be able to take him on from the right. And I create a pathway for somebody else to come in through the middle. But people just weren't buying Diet Coke from Ron DeSantis.
No, he's definitely.
They wanted the original. I also think the indictments helped Trump a lot. I think that each one of them turbocharged his base and made him seem like he was the martyr that he claimed to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I have this question here. So we're primary season has kind of been a dud. It's the least exciting that I can have in recent memory. And we're stuck with, what is it? The sequel nobody wants, right? Where you just got the two old guys going at it again. I guess the question I have is two parts to this is, anytime you look at polling, anytime you kind of talk to somebody in, a bar, restaurant, wherever, everyone says how much they hate both these people. They're like, I hate them. Yeah. They both suck. I don't want them, blah, blah, blah. But like people keep going out and voting for them. Right. So like, what is this? Like, why there's 330 million plus people in the United States and we're stuck with two dudes in their 80s, essentially. Why do you think there's that disconnect between what people claim they say they don't like or what they might want, but they still end up having these two dudes as the people at the top of the ticket?
Well, I think in the case of President Joe Biden, there was really no other option when no one else stepped up to really primary him. I think the Democratic National Committee, which is basically an extension of the White House when there's an incumbent president, changed the calendar so that there was an advantage for Joe Biden. It placed the first primary state at South Carolina rather than New Hampshire, which he didn't win in 2020, or Iowa, which he also didn't win in 2020. It started in South Carolina, which he won resoundingly. So it made it hard for a primary challenger to come in there and take him on. And in the case of Donald Trump, the base Republican Party likes Donald Trump. The everyday voter perhaps doesn't. That's 30% of the voter, though. It's more than 20% than the rest of the Republican, voter. Sorry, not the 20% of the rest of the electorate, if you want to, assume that the parties are split. It pretty much is in this country 50-50. Although Trump has like a 47% ceiling. Regardless, the Republican base of the party is still very enthused by Donald Trump. And he wins primaries. There's really like no other way to put it. And the primaries start in Iowa, in New Hampshire, then you go to South Carolina, and nobody else can beat him.
So this is what I don't understand on this point is, okay, about the no one challenging Biden. I mean, that would be pretty surprising. Like, I think the last time, I guess, was 2012 Obama, right? Like, nobody was going to primary Obama. Like, that just wasn't going to happen. I don't think Clinton got primaried in 96. So like, the chances of somebody actually on the Democratic side primarying Biden this year wasn't, I mean, that's like slim to none, right?
He did, though. He had one primary challenger, Dean Phillips, but he didn't do very well. He's a congressman from Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
He barely registered.
Yeah, a viable.
And Marianne Williamson.
Yeah, viable candidates. I mean, not to say anything about them as people.
But Biden is historically weak. Biden is historically weaker than Obama was going into his reelection, and Bill Clinton. Jimmy Carter was primaried.
That's true.
Because he was historically weak.
That's fair. But I guess I wasn't really expecting that to happen. I just wasn't. I just feel like the DNC has it like, this is our guy. We're going to stick with him. We're not going to change the ticket. This is what it is.
Yeah, but he's 80 years old, like 81 now.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Like, what does he say? He's old, but his ideas aren't old. Is that what he said? That's the new thing they're rolling out now, right? That's the kind of tagline that he has. I mean,
yeah, fine. Like,
but I guess
whatever.
Okay, but
he's still 81.
Okay, here's my thing on this about the age thing. I mean, he's super old. Yes, I totally agree. Would I like someone younger? Absolutely. I guess my question on this is, so what? Like, my thing is like, okay, he can't do anything about his age, number one. But two, we've had so many not so many, but we've had plenty of presidents that have died in office younger than him, like historically.
Like who?
If you go all the way back, you've had William Henry Harrison, right? Then he like die after a month. We've had, was it Taylor or Fillmore? One of them died in office. I mean,
Kennedy died. Obviously,
I mean, we have 4 presidents that have been assassinated in office. Like, it's not the first time.
But in modern history,
sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not in modern history. Yes, but like,
it's not great.
It's not
but
great.
What about what if they don't die and they're just there and they're not functioning at full capacity?
Yeah, the case there is like Woodrow Wilson, who probably
to some people they'd rather them not be. They would rather them not be in office. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, I get that.
Rather than not. Yeah,
I totally get that. But there's literally nobody like that can win in all of these places at the moment. Like when I ask people this, I'm like, who would you want?
I actually don't know that. We don't know that actually.
Okay, who would we have that could win in the 6 battleground states? Who could win electoral? 7 electoral college wins. Who's that candidate right now on the Democrat side?
I think Gretchen Whitmer probably could do it.
I agree.
Plus, she'd win Michigan, which Biden is going to have a problem with anyway. 20% of the voters came out and protested him uncommitted in Michigan because of the war in Gaza.
Right.
That's 100,000 people. He won Michigan by 150,000 in 2020. Trump won Michigan in 2016 by 10,000 votes. So Michigan is definitely a do or die kind of state. And if you are a governor from Michigan, she's moderate. She'd probably play well in Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
North Carolina, battleground states.
Listen, I love her. I think she's great. I think
she probably would do well.
Yeah.
I mean, you could maybe make the argument that like J.B. Pritzker from Illinois has the money to pull it off because he's a billionaire. Wes Moore is really popular from Maryland.
We love Wes Moore over here.
It's an easy state to win.
Yeah.
Josh Shapiro was a very popular governor from Pennsylvania. That's another battleground state that I think Biden won by like a point or half a point.
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you're looking at it from the battleground states alone, like that's just a handful of names. The bench of the Democratic Party is strong. Anyone who wants to tell you it's not strong is lying.
Well, I guess the thing that is there is how much of this is kind of like party politics, right? Where it's like how much of this is people saying, okay, we're gonna let you kind of do this. Because everyone on those, I agree with you on all those people, but everyone says, Wes Moore, you just got in there. I mean, I live in Maryland, right? So we love him and he's great.
You don't think he spent enough time?
He's not there yet. I think some people have said that Gretchen seems the strongest, but I think some people are saying she's waiting until 28. She'll be really strong then. Is she still the co-chair of the campaign? I think she still is, right?
Yeah, they all are.
Yeah.
They're some of the biggest surrogates, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sometimes I think some people think it's timing.
They're behind. Yeah, I mean, if they weren't the surrogates, they'd be running against him. They'd be primarying him. They're afraid of what that will do to their political future. When they run in 2028.
Yeah, that's fair.
No one obviously has the grit to do it. I guess you could say. I don't know what the word is. The word I want to say may not be appropriate for your show, but
you can say whatever you want.
No,
you can say whatever you want.
They're afraid of fucking the party, and they are, and they're afraid of having like the Obamas come out and blast them, or the Clintons, or losing all of their funding, their donors being pissed. But at the same time, like when you've got a candidate that's this weak, like it's kind of like don't shoot at the king, like don't miss if you're shooting at the king. And I think they all don't think that they could actually hit dead on. So instead they're surrogates, and they're getting their name ID out there, and they're talking on TV shows and getting you all ready for when they run for president in 2028. But until then, it's a crapshoot. It's going to be like literally a razor thin election that maybe we don't even know the results for days afterwards.
Oh, certainly. I'm kind of expecting that at this point. But I guess this gets to the big point that I keep seeing, which is interesting. I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Is look, on paper, okay, let's put his age on the bench for a minute. It's important. I think it's a huge factor. I get it. But in theory, he should be cruising to re-election in some ways, right? Like he has a lot of legislative wins. You can say whatever you want about his foreign affairs kind of thing. Most people don't vote on foreign affairs anyways, or foreign policy. But he's definitely been active. Like he was on the right side, quote unquote, with Russia, Ukraine. I mean, the Israel thing I know is a big mess, but it's like the United States has always sided with Israel since like the 40s. Like that's just not going to change, really. So yeah, and like I think he hasn't really messed up anywhere.
So you think you always think he's been on the right side of foreign affairs this whole time?
No, I don't think he's been on the right side. I think that he's been pretty active. Like he hasn't taken a passive approach. Like he's tried to be very front and center. We're leaders. We have our partners across the world. Like it's pretty active. I mean, the thing with Afghanistan, whatever was, it's a lousy pullout, whatever. Okay, a lot of that was started by Trump anyways, but people don't really bring that up. It's like, we're not there anymore. Great. So all I'm saying is he's been active. It's not like he's been very passive or something. But if you look at...
But he was the president of the United States of America. Like, you have to be active on these. Yeah. Well, basically, the world is on fire. Like, this is not a normal time.
Right.
Some people might say he was a little too passive on the pullout of Afghanistan. That sort of left, the impression to the rest of the world that, like, America will not step up if something happens.
Yeah.
And that may have explained why Russia, again, made the march on Ukraine, or Hamas decided to attack Israel because they didn't think that the Americans would step up.
That possibly. So, yeah, possibly. I think he has been, still pretty strong with Ukraine. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong side. I'm just saying like he's been active, but that's fair. I think some people could say maybe the Afghanistan thing.
Yeah, they've given money, but they give money to Ukraine. That's for sure.
But I think if you look at home, and economically and legislatively, there's a lot of bills passed. And I guess, why does that not matter? Everyone talks about like what it feels like. They talk about, right. I hear the same things. Milk and eggs are expensive, and inflation and all these things. I hear that, gas, and I hear that and I get it. And I think it's real. And I think he should address it maybe a little bit more head on in some ways. But like all of these objective numbers and metrics and data and unemployment and the inflation rate and all these things are significantly better, and he has all these legislative wins, and it's like, why does none of that matter anymore? Like, why do people not care about that as much anymore? Because everyone's saying that it was the great glory days for 3.5, 4 years with Trump, and it's like, okay, like yeah, like it was not terrible, but it wasn't amazing either. But people don't remember it that way.
The price of groceries was 20%, or the price of goods was 20% lower. So just flat out, that's why.
Sure.
We weren't suffering with inflation at that point. The inflation was caused by Trump, yes, and by Biden too, by sending out all those checks for COVID recovery. Both presidents contributed to it, but it wasn't felt during Trump. So, and here's the thing: you're talking about policy. in politics, there is nothing stronger than a feeling. Policy will never be stronger than a feeling.
Okay, tell me
So you can throw
about this.
stats at people. Yeah, you can tell people that the unemployment level is the lowest it's ever been.
Mhm.
But if you feel like you can't get a good job or the kind of job you want, or you're unhappy with your job and you don't see options elsewhere, then you're not going to believe it.
Mm.
You're going to say the economy's great, but you're going to say, I feel like I have less money because things cost more.
Mhm.
You can say you're going to start feeling the effects of inflation going down. We're attacking price gouging. You'll feel it in the future. And maybe people will. And that's the thing. A lot of the economists and, of course, like White House officials say that by the time, November rolls around, people will feel the full effects of Bidenomics. It just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no immediate impact, and that will help them. And I think they're banking on that, and they may be right. If gas prices are out of control in the summer, we may have a problem. Although, reporting says that America is pumping out more gas than any other country in the world right now. So that might not be an issue. I think if all the economic indicators, like you say, are felt by people around the time of the election, then Biden will cruise to re-election. But right now, he is losing in every single poll to Trump in the 7 battleground states.
Yeah.
Substantially,
I know.
3 to 5 points.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And
it's been that way for like a year.
Last year, this time last election, he was beating Trump 5-10 points in those same battleground states. And he only ended up winning by 40,000 votes because it's really hard to tap into the Trump voter.
Right.
They're notoriously hard to pull. So I understand what you're saying. The numbers, the metrics, the policy is positive. But what is policy and numbers and metrics if they're not felt? And that's all that politics is about. It's a feeling.
Yeah. I mean, and would you say that it's just kind of always been that way, but because of social media, everyone's connected. It's just a little bit more like on steroids where it's like, now that's really what be like. I don't hear anybody talk about any of these things anymore. Like, it's like, well, those things do matter. Policy things do matter. Like, you don't talk.
You hear it on like, if you turn on cable news and stuff, you hear it all the time. They have like the White House surrogates out there talking about the latest jobs reports or GDP, latest indicators of the economy. I think it's out there. Like, are people on TikTok going to talk about it?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
But half of the time they're dancing on there anyway, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So sure, like you may think the dialogue is too overheated, and I think it is on a lot of these outlets. But I also think the dialogue is overheated at the kitchen table too. I don't think people are acting different on social media per se. I mean, maybe the bots and trolls that leave nasty messages, or people feel like more entitled to share the negative thoughts they have in their head. Maybe they're being directed by people like Donald Trump, who have decided to infuse the national conversation with more dangerous rhetoric in a lot of ways, impolite rhetoric. But it's funny. It's not funny, but Biden used the word illegal, right? During the State of the Union address. And the White House was not sure how to deal with it. At first, they were like, we're fine with it. This is fine. Eventually, they walked it back and he apologized because, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and other, members of the far left, not even just far left, just like progressives, were upset about it. And I understand that it's an offensive term, but I do think when people talk about migration that is illegal, that's the word they use at the kitchen table. And in some ways, with Democrats having to recognize that the number one issue that's coming up for both Democrats and Republicans is the migration issue, that it may have not hurt him for talking about the issue on their terms in the way that they talk about it. Because it's not just it's not white people that are even just using those terms. It's a lot of first, second, third generation Hispanic people who came to this country legally talking about, migration through the southern border. And I think they're starting to realize that that it might be that they need to be more aggressive with attacking this policy. And in some ways, it was impolite what he said. And some people have gone so far as to call it racist, but it showed that Biden is thinking about the migration surges in the same way a lot of Americans are feeling about it right now.
Two things on that.
And that Democrats who have historically dismissed it are taking it seriously.
Yeah. So two things on that. So one, this is what's most frustrating about the left or liberals is the fact that that's what they choose to pick up and make as an issue when that's not the fucking point. The point is, how are you trying to deal with things at the border, and how are you trying to deal with things generally about this? And why don't you have really good, comprehensive plans for the border? I'm not saying for immigration policy, blah, blah, blah. They have historically had good plans for that. But for the border, where they're not putting their head in the sand, acting like it's not a big deal when it's millions of people that are coming over, like that's a big deal. Like, and you have to take care of it and you have to address it in a variety of ways, but focusing on the fact that he used a word when everybody used that word 10 years ago, like, and it was fine. Like, it's just, that's such a dumb focus to have. And like, I don't think people really care.
It's like they've lost the plot a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing that makes people like me and a lot of other people super frustrated with the Democrats, is that it's so like, that's the wrong thing to focus on. It's really ridiculous.
I mean, I'm first generation as well. Like, my mom came here from Poland. She had a green card when I was born. And like that was the way we talked about it too in our household.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm also first generation. My dad came here from Central America.
I didn't understand it and I didn't use that word, but that was sort of the way it was talked about in my household too. Who was in this country legally and who wasn't?
Right.
Were they coming from the southern border? No, they were coming from Eastern Europe. And whether they were like related to our family or not, or family friends, you know, like that was sort of the way it was. It's like, are you here legally or are you not? Do you have a green card or do you not? You know what I mean?
But you know what this means? This just means that we're getting old. That's all it means. That's all it means, is that
no, I don't think
we've
so.
aged past what the new thing is now. Now there's a new way that we have to say things, and it's, you know.
No, I don't agree. I think that there's backlash even from young people. I think that like the tone policing has become so extreme on the left.
I mean, it's always been that way, no?
It's a reaction to Trump, because Trump is completely throughout all of the norms of polite like society, and even just like throwing out racist ideas and terms. And so I think there's been an overreaction in terms of that.
That's fair.
But it's sort of like limited conversation that needs to happen anyway about like serious issues and policies. And I'm not saying that we should use words that make people feel uncomfortable, but I think like based on what Biden was trying to communicate, like in some ways, it was a useful way to communicate that he understood the concerns of a lot of people who are fearful of the rapid migration and the changing. And frankly, I mean, you know, everyone's like, both sides have been very cynical with the issue of migration. The right has been cynical in the sense that Donald Trump would not let them pass a bipartisan immigration bill.
Right.
That's Republican Democrats and senators worked on to add more immigration judges, more border patrol agents, increase capacity for like, I guess, asylum detention centers, make it easier for asylum seekers to enter and also to stop flows at the border. And Trump said no, because he thought it would be an election year win for Joe Biden. Okay. And that was extremely cynical. And the fact that the Republicans didn't do that, I think it cost them that George Santos seat in Long Island, frankly. And because that was a seat that voted again, like last cycle, 2020, they voted for Santos on the issue of crime, essentially fears of crime in the city, because it's a suburban, like very Tony Long Island suburb. And I think I also am a bit cynical about what the Democrats are doing too, because for so long they ignored the border. And now with the fact that polling shows that Democrats are, you know, increasingly ranking it as their top priority above the economy, you know, above crime. Like now they're eager to pass a bill to seal off the border, which they weren't so eager to do before. And the reason they are like this is because Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis, and other red state governors started shipping migrants up north to Democratic cities like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia. And those cities said, oh my God, we have 100,000 people on our doorstep. We're at capacity. We don't know what to do. And Greg Abbott basically said, welcome to our world. this is how it's been for us forever.
Well, it's very frustrating because it's sad that people like that are getting lost in the shuffle here. But that's what it takes for many of those like blue states or whatever, blue cities, to recognize that it's an issue. Like it shouldn't have to get to that point. Like it's an ineptitude of Democrats.
People shouldn't be having to be used as like political employees. But at the end of the day, it's like if they never felt it in their own cities, this would never have become an issue.
Yeah.
This would never have become something that, the suburbs of New York are worried about. Eric Adams screaming at, President Biden to send the National Guard.
Yeah.
The Democratic governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, saying we're maxed out. We can't handle any more migrants. Imagine if you were a governor in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, any state that has a border.
Yeah. No,
you're right. You're like, we've been dealing with this forever. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's changing the demographic of their cities, of their suburbs. And it's making people increasingly move to the center because like, even you're just seeing like all of these cities, San Francisco, Washington and Oregon, like they're all, even Washington, DC, they're becoming increasingly tougher on crime. They're letting go of a lot of their liberal policies. Like they're requiring like drug testing for welfare in one of the cities. Kathy Hochul's putting the National Guard in the subways. It's San Francisco. They're completely changing a lot of their more progressive criminal justice laws because residents are just saying we don't like we don't like the way we're living. Like we don't like the value of our life here.
Yeah.
And these are some of the most progressive cities in the country. And it's interesting. Like I know things ping pong both ways, but ahead of an election year, it's really interesting to see these like progressive mayors and governors start taking action against crime as it creeps up as concerns for voters ahead of the election year.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, real quick, last question I have for you. Predictions. What's going to happen in the House? It's March 12th. What do you say? What happens in the House?
Oh, who do I think like is going to win the House or
majority?
I really don't know at this point.
Really?
I think that the Democrats could take back the House. It's hard to say. It depends on how Trump does, I guess, down ballot.
Republicans have been so terrible in the House, though. You don't think that has any ripple effect?
Honestly, like I don't think people are paying that much attention.
maybe not.
I don't think people really pay that much attention, to be honest. Maybe they do.
Yeah.
Senate poised for Republicans to take that.
Yeah, barely, I think.
Just because of the map. It's not going to be like substantial, maybe like a seat or two. They'll have a majority.
I agree.
Who knows? I really don't know.
And
it could be close.
And
also, I think like for Democrats who are hoping to take back the seats in the suburbs of New York and upstate New York and in California that helped the Republicans win, the House in 2022, I think it might not be as easy as they thought.
Oh, no.
Especially since there wasn't a lot of redistricting, that those Republicans may end up holding on to those seats. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not really a great prognosticator for the House.
Okay, President then? What do you think happens? What's your call? I
think there's a really good chance Trump could win re-election.
Yeah.
I think that there's I don't know at this point. There's a really good chance Biden could too, but I don't have like a strong feeling either way that one of them will win. And so I did think in 2016 that Trump could win, which was an outlier opinion. In 2020, I was certain Biden would win, and he only won by 40,000 votes in the battleground states.
Right.
So because it's so hard to pull Trump voters sort of think he can win again now, which would be kind of crazy. But
well, somebody's got to win. So
exactly.
Okay.
That's why you should go out and vote.
That's right.
Because if you don't,
that's right.
Then you'll be able to say you had nothing to do with it.
That's right. Tara, thank you so much for your time. Listeners should listen to your podcast. Somebody's got to win. They should read all of your great writing over at Puck. Is it puck.news, right? And
yep.
And yeah, your writing's great. The podcast is great. I'll keep listening.
Thank you.
And big thanks for coming on and doing this.
Thanks for having me on the show. It was fun.
Absolutely.